welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is Brewing with Underwhelming Commanders, episode 33. And we are starting out this week with Errant, Street Artist, 1 blue mana human rogue 03, Flash Defender, Haste, pay 1 and a blue, tap, copy target spell you control that wasn't cast. You may choose new targets for the copy. This really is one of the most unique commanders I've ever seen. When this first got spoiled, I made a video specifically about it because I thought it was so interesting. However, I thought there would be more ways to use it. You know, it's very limited in what you're doing here. Copy target spell you control that wasn't cast. A lot of people on that video started making suggestions like Isochron Scepter. No, sorry, that will not work. Isochron Scepter, you are making a copy of a spell that you are actually casting. You have to have a way to put a spell on the stack without casting it. You're very limited in that, unfortunately. So this commander, maybe not quite as interesting as I originally thought it was. Still very, very interesting and unique, no question. We got a tap ability here, so of course we got to have 1,000-Year Elixir, Mage Right Stone, so that we can use that ability more than once, right? Maybe we'll want to use it on our turn, maybe we'll want to use it on our opponent's turn. There's lots of ways to copy spells without doing it on your turn and without using mana as well. That's another thing you want to kind of look for, is ways to copy spells, because that's essentially the only way that you can use this ability, is by copying a spell that is a spell on the stack that you can then target with your Errant's ability. So essentially you're getting another copy of the copy, right? You're just getting 3 total copies of the spell instead of just 1. And having stuff like Mage Right Stone in there is going to be good, because there are going to be effects in this deck that you're going to be doing on your turn, and there's also going to be some that you're going to be doing on your opponent's turn as well. For example, Wandering Archaic and Narset's Reversal. These are both just 2 really great cards that you could put in just about any commander deck, but they are going to be copying your opponent's spells, and it's more than likely going to be on their turn. Wandering Archaic, whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, they may pay 2, and if they don't, and I don't think they will, you put a copy of that spell on the stack. That is a spell that wasn't cast, and you can now copy it. So you're going to want your commander untapped on your opponent's turns as well. Narset's Reversal, same thing, right? You're going to copy target instant or sorcery spell, then return it to owner's hand. You may choose new targets for the copy. So again, you didn't cast it, you just copied it. Now you can copy it again with your commander, and you really probably would go a heavy instant and sorcery theme here as well, like Swarm Intelligence, obviously. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may copy that spell. There's going to be a lot of this kind of stuff in mono blue, right? You're limited to mono blue here, which isn't great, and you're already limited in what your commander is doing. So it is going to be probably the best option to just go and copy instant and sorcery, or just straight up instant and sorcery theme with this, because that is going to be the easiest thing for you to copy, right? It has to be a spell, right? Copy target spell you control that wasn't cast. I should also point out that it is a spell you control, but if you're creating a copy of something, it is a spell you control, right? Just like when you create a token that's a copy of something, if you create a copy of a spell and put it on the stack, you're going to control that copy. The Magecraft ability will work fantastic here for a number of reasons, because it's whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell. So you're probably going to be in a bit of a spell slinger's theme here, where you're going to be casting lots of instants and sorceries. Also, you're going to be copying a lot as well. So if I cast an instant or sorcery, I get the trigger off my Archmage Emeritus, or I get to create a token off of my Dika. And then also, if I copy it with my commander's ability, then I'll get another trigger, right? So I get to draw another card, and I get to create another token. So these Magecraft abilities are going to work great here, because we're going to essentially get double value off of our commander. Tavia Living Thesis, another great one. This could be a win con in the deck. Again, you're in probably almost assuredly an instant sorcery theme. You're going to have a ton of those. So Octavia is going to cost 8 less to cast if you have 8 or more instant sorcery cards in your graveyard. So you probably just want to wait until you do have that to cast it. Has Ward 8, which pretty much means it's untargetable, and it's an 8/8, so it's a nice big creature you can smack your opponents with. However, also, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, target creature has base power and toughness 8/8 until end of turn. So you can just turn any of your creatures that are just lying around into 8/8s and throw them at your opponent. Pretty great way to close out the game in this deck, I think. You have to have Twinning Staff, obviously. 3 mana artifact. If you would copy a spell 1 or more times, instead copy it that many times plus an additional time. So again, this just works perfectly with our commander. You can also pay 7 and tap to copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. So if you are really desperate for that copy effect, you do have an option here. However, mostly this is just going to sit on the battlefield, and every time we use our commander's ability, it'll give us another copy, right? Lithoform Lithoform Engine is also a great fit here, right? 4 mana, legendary artifact. You can pay 2 and tap, copy target activated or triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Now that will work with our commander's ability, right? Our commander has an activated ability, so you can just pay 2 to then copy the activated ability, which will then copy the spell again, right? So that works there. Pay 3 and tap, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. So that's probably the one you're going to be using most. It is a little mana intensive to pay for the spell, then pay 3, then pay 2 for your commander's ability. But if you think about it this way, if I cast a Pongify, for example, that's a 1 mana spell. I'm going to copy it with my Lithoform Engine. That's going to be 4 mana total. Now I'm destroying 2 creatures, and then I pay 2 more to destroy another creature by using my commander's ability. So that's 6 total mana to destroy 3 target creatures. That seems pretty good. But even better, I think, is pay 4 and tap, copy target permanent spell you control, right? This is the best way and really the only way for us to copy something that isn't a instant or sorcery, because now we can cast our Archmage Emeritus, for example. That is a permanent spell. We can pay 4, create a copy of it, right? The copy is going to go on the stack. When it resolves, it will be a token, but before it resolves, it's still going to be a spell on the stack that we can then copy with our commander's ability. So then we will end up getting 3 Archmage Emerituses. That's a whole lot of card draw. It's a lot of hoops to jump through. Nevertheless, the payoff, I think, is worth it. And the one way that I found with Errant that you can use in this deck that isn't just straight up copying is the epic mechanic. And of course, because we're in mono blue, we only have one option, which is Internal Dominion. Cost 10 mana, 7 blue, 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 but this is a win con in the deck. And I think it's a pretty interesting one. I mean, if I'm playing an Errant deck, this goes in there for sure because it's a really fun, interesting win con for the deck, right? It's a sorcery. Search target opponent's library for an artifact, creature, enchantment, or land card. Put that card onto the battlefield under your control, then they shuffle their library, and of course it has the epic mechanic, which means for the rest of the game, you can't cast spells. So obviously you gotta wait for the right moment to do this. At the beginning of each of your upkeeps for the rest of the game, copy this spell, except for the epic ability. If that spell has targets, you may choose new targets for the copy. So what you're gonna do on your upkeep is you're just gonna put a copy of this spell on the stack. So you are putting the spell on the stack without actually casting it. That will work with your commander's ability. And being able to do this twice is pretty darn good, right? So every single turn, you can put your Eternal Dominion copy on the stack. Then you can copy it with your commander. So you're going to get 2 of these every single turn. You're going to be able to search 2 of your opponent's libraries, any artifact, creature, enchantment, or land, and put it onto the battlefield under your control. And then if you have an untap effect like your Mage Right Stone, untap your commander, do it again. You're going to have lots of mana around because you can't cast spells, obviously. So all your mana is now going to be open to use stuff like Mage Right Stone, to use stuff like Lithoform Engine, copy that spell, right? All that kind of stuff. If you have your Twinning Staff out, now you're going to get a bunch of copies. You can really go nuts with this spell once it's entered the epic phase. And you can also throw Paradox Haze in here as well, which is going to give you an extra upkeep. And of course, if you have an extra upkeep, that means your epic is going to trigger twice. You'll get another one. So really great way, I think, really interesting way to close out the game. I don't recommend doing this via webcam, spell table or something. It can get really difficult searching your opponent's libraries when you're not actually physically in the same room as them. But what a fun, interesting, fantastic way to close out a game if you're in an Errant deck, I think. But coming in at number 2 this week is Go-shintai of Hidden Cruelty. 3 and a black, legendary enchantment creature shrine. 2/2 with Death Touch. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay 1. If you do, destroy target creature with toughness X or less, where X is the number of shrines you control. So, of course, these are really difficult commanders to build around. Any of these monocolored shrines from Neon Dynasty. This, for me, is probably the one that is the best to go after for a number of reasons. I had these guys ranked really low on my ranking of Neon Dynasty commanders for obvious reasons, because it relies on the number of shrines you control. Only are very limited on how many shrines you can have, obviously, right? This one, I think, is the best build around of the group, though, and I'll tell you why, for 2 reasons. One, that ability is pretty good, right? Pay 1, destroy target creature with toughness X or less, where X is the number of shrines you control. If you just have your commander on the table, you get to destroy a creature with toughness 1 or less, which usually there will always be one around, right? The other reason, and the big one, the main one, is because you're in black, so you have tutors, so you can go get the other shrines, right? You want to have at least one, or preferably both, of the other shrines in play for obvious reasons. And of course, they are Honden of Night's Reach and Sanctum of Stone Fangs, both really great, right? Honden of Night's Reach, 3 and a black shrine at the beginning of your upkeep. Target opponent discards a card for each shrine you control. So if you have all 3 of your shrines in play, including your commander, you can have an opponent discard 3 cards, and Sanctum of Stone Fangs, at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of shrines you control. So that's pretty good too. But of course, more importantly, it's going to make our commander better if we have them in play as well. So now if we have both of our other shrines in play, we can destroy a creature with toughness up to 3. And that's going to cover a lot of stuff, right? That's going to be a lot better. So you do have the tutor option here, and you know, if you're making this deck, put as many tutors as you can in there. I mean, sorry, it's just the way it is. This is a really tough commander to build around, super underwhelming. So the fact that you have access to tutors, you really should take advantage of at the very least, so you can at least get your other shrines in play, so your commander is not super limited. You want to be able to get that trigger on every single turn, right? On every single end step, you want to be able to kill a creature in play. And if there's no 1 toughness creatures around, you know, that's going to be a waste of your commander's ability. So having more shrines in play is going to make it better. Of course, we can also make the toughness of other creatures a lot smaller, and Knight of Souls Betrayal and Karvek the Spiteful will do this. All creatures get -1/-1, right? You don't want to have these both in play because, of course, your commander's just a 2/2 and your commander will die. So you do have to be careful there. But just having 1 in play will now, I mean, obviously all the 1 toughness creatures will just be dead, and now you can move up to the 2 toughness creatures because, of course, they're just going to be a 1 toughness now. It's going to widen the range in which we can kill creatures here, right? Doomwake Giant and Blightcaster are also fantastic here because we are going to be in a little bit of an enchantment theme. I mean, our commander's an enchantment. We have other shrines. We have other enchantments. Doomwake Giant will give -1/-1 to all of just our opponent's creatures, which is ideal until end of turn. Whenever we play an enchantment, and Blightcaster, whenever we cast an enchantment spell, we can give target creature -2/-2. So now if there's a 3/3 creature around, we can give it -2/-2 until end of turn. And then on our end step, it will still be -2/-2, so we can kill it with our commander's ability, right? Engineered Plague and Plague Engineer are other ways that we can give static -1/-1 to our opponent's creatures. I mean, if our opponent's playing a Saproling deck, we can just straight up kill all their creatures. If they're playing like a zombie deck, now we can turn all those 2/2 zombies into 1/1s and start knocking them off with our commander's abilities. I mean, this could be great cards against tribal themes, or even if we have an opponent who has a commander that has a 2 toughness that is a certain creature type, we can target this with it, right? If we have our Plague Engineer and our opponent has a 2 toughness creature, they play it, now it's a 1/1, we can kill it with our commander, and then it dies, but our Plague Engineer is still on the battlefield, or our Engineered Plague is still on the battlefield, and we can then do the same thing. Whenever they play their commander is going to get that -1/-1 because it has that creature type, and we can kill it with our commander. So we can almost sort of lock someone out of the game with that. Massacre Wurm and Demon of Dark Schemes are also going to be fantastic here. I mean, Massacre Wurm can go in just about any deck. It's going to give -2/-2 to all your opponent's creatures, which is great. Also, because we're going to be killing our opponent's creatures all the time, the second ability is fantastic. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, they lose 2 life. I mean, this card can go in any deck, really, and can be great because creatures are dying all the time in a commander game. Demon of Dark Schemes is going to kill our commander, though. It gives -2/-2 to all creatures, so it's going to kill our commander. However, I just really like this ability of whenever another creature dies, you get an energy, and then creatures are going to be dying lots in this deck. People look at this card and they think, oh, well, I'm not going to play it because I'm not in an energy theme, but you don't have to be in an energy theme to play this card because creatures are always dying, so you're going to be getting lots of energy, right? And this last ability is really fantastic. 2 and a black and pay 4 energy. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield into your control. That's pretty fantastic. So it's worth putting in a deck where you plan on having creatures die all the time, I think. You also could do, I think, the Wither or Infect mechanics here, right? Either of them work really good here because you're going to be putting -1/-1 counters on your opponent's creatures. This is another way, if you wanted to go a completely different way with this deck, you could do mono black Wither/Infect, which I know looking at your commander doesn't seem to make sense, but with the Wither mechanic, you're putting -1/-1 counters on those creatures permanently, so of course you're going to lessen their toughness, which is going to make it easier for your commander to kill them. And of course, if you're doing that theme, Necroskitter is going to be great because now when they die, you get them under your control, and Midnight Banshee is going to be great as well because at the beginning of your upkeep, put a -1/-1 counter on each non-black creature. I mean, this card I would put in the deck no matter what. The Wither mechanic works great, but also shrinking your opponent's creature's toughness, and your creatures are all going to be black, so you don't have to worry about it. It's going to be a fantastic fit all around, but just the Wither/Infect mechanic, because they are putting -1/-1 counters on your opponent's creatures, you could just build your entire deck around that, and then you could do even a little bit of a -1/-1 counter theme as well if you're looking for a way to round out the deck, right? That I would probably just go all in on that strategy though, if I wanted to do that. Of course, we're going to have our opponent's creatures dying a lot, hopefully every single time on our turn. Slaughter Specialist, Morbid Opportunist, these are great cards if you have creatures dying all the time, obviously. Slaughter Specialist in particular, because we're giving our opponents a 1/1 creature, which we can then immediately kill with our commander, right? And then whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on Slaughter Specialist, so it's going to get big pretty darn quick. A great one is Sangromancer. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you gain 3 life. That's pretty good. Also has whenever an opponent discards a card, you gain 3 life. Again, another card you could put in almost any deck. Works particularly good here though. And Revel in Riches is again another one where it's just good value. It has that at the beginning of your upkeep. If you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game, which is good because it's a win con in this deck. But at the same time, it's sort of bad because it makes it so that your opponents are going to want to get it off the table really quick. I've talked about this before. This is sort of a weird card where it's nice to put in a deck like this because it's a win con for you, but it's going to be really, really tough for you to get up to that 10 treasure tokens without your opponents getting this off the table, right? It's one of those cards that I find when your opponents see, they just panic and they're like, oh my gosh, he's going to get up to 10 treasure tokens super quick and we're going to have to get it off the table. I've never seen anyone win the game with this card before. Personally, either they struggle to get up to the 10 treasure tokens. People keep using the treasure tokens, right? You get the treasure tokens and then they're just sitting there. You're tempted to use them. You don't want them just lying around, right? I've had people even say, I'm never going to get to 10 treasure tokens. Don't worry about the win the game trigger. I'm just using this for the treasure tokens so I can use them for mana. And it's like, okay, well, great. Have fun with that. It works in this deck though. Could be a win con for you, right? It would be kind of tough with this strategy. Again, Massacre Wurm could be good here because your opponents are losing life. Any drain effect like that might be helpful as well. It's a tough one. This is a really, really tough commander. So for me, I would say try to get those other shrines in play. Try to get your commander's ability at least usable so that you can guaranteed use it on every end step. That's how I would. I would always have the 1 mana open. On my end step, I would be guaranteed killing a creature every turn, which in itself is just super, super handy, right? Being able to kill a creature on every single end step for 1 mana is fantastic, right? You could pretty much do whatever else you want with the deck. But moving on to our number 1 commander this week, and again, I will show you the poll. Here it is. It is old Rutstein coming in number 1 this time. And if you'll notice something about this poll, I decided to go with newer commanders, but all very underwhelming, right? Despite the fact that they are new, I thought all the commanders I picked for this list are very underwhelming commanders that are definitely tough to build around, and old Rutstein is no exception there. 1, a black and a green human peasant. It's a 1/4. When old Rutstein enters the battlefield or at the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card. If a land card is milled this way, create a treasure token. If a creature card is milled this way, create a 1/1 insect token. If a non-creature, non-land card is milled this way, create a blood token. So very, very underwhelming ability for a number of reasons. First of all, it's only probably going to happen once a turn. Secondly, it only works with his ability, right? If you mill stuff through other means, right? If you're self-milling and milling stuff into your graveyard, that doesn't trigger old Rutstein, right? Old Rutstein only gives you those tokens off of his own ability. It has to be a land card milled this way or a creature card milled this way, and it's only one. You're only maximum going to get one thing off of this, and the payoff's not great, right? You're going to get treasure token, an insect token, or a blood token. That is it. Once every turn. That's not a lot of payoff, and there really isn't a ton of ways to build around this. Now, if it were me, here's a couple ways you could go with it, and before I get to the deck that I actually built, here's a couple other things that you could do. First of all, you could do a land theme where I am milling lands into my graveyard, and then I can play them from my graveyard, right? You could put Ramineb Excavator in there, Crucible of Worlds. That seems like good value. You're doing a treasure token theme, and there is a lot of treasure support, especially recently, that you could put in the deck, sacrifice those treasures to do other stuff. That would definitely be a way you could go with it. There has been so much treasure stuff lately that I didn't want to go that direction. The blood token thing works here too, because blood tokens you can discard. So you are doing a self-mill, and you could also do discard, so you could do a reanimator theme there a little bit, right? Where you have the blood tokens, discard the creature you want into your graveyard. You're also milling creatures into your graveyard likely as well. So you could do a reanimator theme with this deck as well. Again, that's been done to death, so I didn't want to go that direction. I will also point out that the treasure tokens and the blood tokens are both artifact tokens, right? So you could go in a bit of an artifact token theme here as well. Black and green colors aren't great for that, but there is a little bit of support there. there where you could do a sacrifice artifact theme in black and green if you want to, because you have the option of both the treasures and the blood tokens. I went with the middle one, right? If a creature card is milled this way, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. That's the one that I'm more built around. Now, of course, we're not going to have complete control over what's happening. It's just random milling. Now, I do want to control the top of my library. I did put Sensei's Divining Top and Mirri's Guile in here. These are kind of expensive cards. Thankfully, Sensei's Divining Top has been reprinted in Double Masters, because that is a card that goes on a lot of decks and it really needs to be reprinted more. I don't know why they don't reprint it more. I mean, it's banned in Legacy, so you don't have to worry about everyone playing it in Legacy anymore. It's mostly used just by Commander players, so why not just print this card in every set? I don't know. Anyway, these cards are going to allow us, obviously, to manipulate the top of our library so that we can mill exactly what we want. Mirri's Guile is at the beginning of upkeep trigger, so obviously that is as well as our Commander. We'll just stack the triggers so that we use Mirri's Guile first, then we use Old Rutstein's ability to make sure we're getting a creature into our graveyard, because that's what we're building around, right? We're getting the insect tokens. If I'm building an Old Rutstein deck, I'm not just going to do random, hey, let's see what I get. You're not going to guaranteed get what you want every time. Well, you could, but mostly you're going to build around one of them. I'm going to build around relying on getting treasures, or I'm relying on getting insects, or I'm relying on getting blood tokens. Whichever one you do, you're going to want cards like Mirri's Guile to make sure you're milling the card that you want. Now, thankfully for us, because we are milling creatures, that's what we want to mill here. We want to get those insect tokens. There's actually a lot of other ways to do this, right? All we have to actually do is put creatures from our graveyard, top of our library, so that we guaranteed mill a creature every single turn. And of course, we can do that with Huo Tao, Honored Physician, and even better, Haunted Crossroads, which of course you can use for a lot of reasons. Heck, if our commander dies, we can just put it on top of our library and draw it next turn. But this is going to guarantee that we get a creature milled into our graveyard on our upkeep, right? With Haunted Crossroads, we can just pay 1 black mana, put any creature from our graveyard, doesn't matter which one it is, top of our library, and then we are guaranteed milling it the next turn and getting the insect token, right? Rather than just always manipulating the top of our library, this is a very easy way to guarantee get the card you want milled into your graveyard every single turn. Vengeful Pharaoh is also a fantastic fit here. 2 black, zombie 5/4 with Death Touch. Whenever combat damage is dealt to you or Planeswalker you control, if Vengeful Pharaoh is in your graveyard, destroy target attacking creature. Then put Vengeful Pharaoh on top of your library. So this is just such a phenomenal fit here. This is a card that's going to sit in our graveyard. If our opponents do us damage, their creature will get destroyed, and then this goes on top of our library. It's going to be a creature that's then going to get milled on our upkeep into our graveyard, which is where we want it. So it's doing double duty here. It's destroying our opponent's attacking creatures, and if it gets put on top of our library, it will then go back into our graveyard and give us the insect token that we want. A couple of cards that are obviously perfect fits here: Crawling Infestation and Crawling Sensation, and this is the reason why I decided to go with the insect theme. I mulled over which one I wanted to preferably go with. Having 2 cards that perfectly fit with what we're doing is kind of nice, right? They're sort of backups for our commander. It's always nice to have backups. Crawling Infestation, 2 and a green enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may mill 2 cards. Whenever one or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere during your turn, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. This ability triggers only once each turn. So we don't have to mill at all with Crawling Infestation. We just mill with our commander. That is going to be a creature being put into our graveyard. As long as we know it's a creature, we will get an insect off our commander, and we will get an insect off our Crawling Infestation. But again, if we don't have our commander around, we can use the milling ability from our Crawling Infestation if we want. And Crawling Sensation, very similar. 2 and a green enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may mill 2 cards. So again, it's a may, we don't have to. This one, however, is whenever one or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere. The first time each turn, put a 1/1 green insect creature token on the battlefield. So this isn't doing the creatures, it's doing the lands. However, we are going to mill lands once in a while, right? It's not always going to be a creature. Sometimes, even if you're looking at the top 3 cards of your library, there won't be any creatures, right? Maybe it'll be only lands and instant sorceries, enchantments, whatever. So this is going to give us the option of, if we mill a land, now we can get an insect as well. Of course, we do need a little bit of insect tribal stuff as well, right? We're just making those little insects. So Black's Vexing Pest is going to be great because, of course, it's going to give our insects +1/+1. 1/1 insects aren't very threatening, so we have to do a little bit more with it. Creekwood Liege, as I just mentioned in my Golgari Staples video, perfect fit in a lot of Golgari decks, particularly here. It's going to give black creatures +1/+1 and our green creatures as well. The insects we are making are only green, so they are just going to get the 1 anthem. Also, though, at the beginning of our upkeep, we get to make a 1/1 black and green worm creature token, so that is fitting the token theme. So this guy's fitting a lot of things that we're doing in the decks. Not making insects, they're worms, not specifically insects, artifacts, but will fit with what we're doing. Pendelhaven Elder, right? This is just a great fit for this deck, I think. 1 and a green elf shaman, 1/1. Tap. Each 1/1 creature you control gets +1/+2 until end of turn. So any of those 1/1 insects that are lying around, as long as we don't have any other Anthem effect, will now become 2/3. So I think that's pretty good. Of course, we got Ant Queen, which is an insect itself, and also is going to be cranking out those green insect tokens as well. Infested Roothold is a really interesting one. This is a pretty good card in a commander game, I think. 4 and a green, 0/3 wall. Has protection from artifacts, which is interesting. But why we have it in this deck, whenever an opponent casts an artifact spell, you may create a 1/1 green insect creature token. I mean, that's happening all the time in a commander game, right? People are always casting artifacts in commander games, and whenever they do, we'll get a 1/1 green insect creature token. That's pretty good. Of course, we are in the token theme, so I got to put Jalhira, Friend of the Forest, in here, House and Emerald Archdruid, as I talked about in a lot of videos recently about how the token theme has gotten a lot better from Baldur's Gate and from Capenna as well. Particularly these background commanders and the backgrounds fit a lot of them. So now we can take these sort of underwhelming 1/1 insects we're making and make them a little more menacing, or tap them for mana if we want to. Backgrounds like Agent of the Iron Throne and Cloakwood Hermit also work great here. Agent of the Iron Throne, I think I've probably put in about 5 or 6 decks already. This card's going to go into so many decks because whenever an artifact or creature you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. We got a whole bunch of creature tokens lying around that are probably going to be dying lots. Cloakwood Hermit also works here because at the beginning of your end step, if a creature card was put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, create 2 tapped 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens. So this is making squirrels, not insects. However, it does fit the token theme, fits the 1/1 theme as well. And we are almost guaranteed to get this trigger because we're going to be milling a creature card into our graveyard every single turn, right? So I think this is a great way to get extra value there. If you're in the token theme, you gotta have Nadir, Agent of Dustnell, and Nadir's Nightblade. Again, talking about a card that I've put in so many decks. I don't know if there is a card that I've put in more decks other than the absolute staples. I don't think there's a card I've put in more decks, either my decks, my patrons' decks, or on my Underwhelming Commanders video, more than Nadir, Agent of Dustnell. This guy just fits in so many decks because it's whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on him, and of course he makes tokens. So he fits in every token theme, fits in an elf theme, creature sacrifice theme, right? This is any token, even your treasure tokens leaving the battlefield will put counters on this guy. And of course Nadir's Nightblade, whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, it's going to drain your opponents. And we are making lots of tokens with this deck, so these are both great fits. These are going to be win cons in the deck. I like Titan Hunter here as well. 4 and a black human warrior 4/5 at the beginning of each player's end step. If no creatures died this turn, Titan Hunter deals 4 damage to that player. It's going to be very, very easy for us to have a creature dying on all of our turns. We can just use Titan Hunter's ability, right? 1 and a black, sacrifice a creature, you gain 4 life. If we have no other way to do it, we will have lots of other ways to do it, but if we have no other way, we can just do this, gain 4 life, sacrifice a creature, and then we don't have to worry about losing the 4 life. Our opponents will have to worry about it. Altar of Baal, another fantastic one from Battle for Baldur's Gate. You can make a 4/1 black skeleton with this, which is good, but more importantly, 1 and a black artifact, pay 2 and a black, and tap, exile a creature you control. So again, this can be a token. We'll just exile one of our worthless insect tokens that we don't really care about anyway and return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. That seems pretty good. Victimize, also really good here, right? 2 and a black sorcery, choose 2 target creature cards in your graveyard, sacrifice a creature, and again, we'll just sacrifice one of those tokens. If you do, return the cards to the battlefield tap, so great recursion spell there. Gala Greeters I think works great here because we are going to have token creatures entering the battlefield all the time, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn, so you can put a +1/+1 counter on Gala Greeters, create a tap treasure token, also fits the token theme, or you can gain 2 life, so that's a great fit. I also got Kogla the Titan Ape in here, which I thought was a pretty good fit, and the reason why is our commander is a human, also is a human that we want to be having enter the battlefield, right? Our commander's ability is an ETB, also at the beginning of upkeep, and Kogla of course has 1 and a green, return target human you control to owner's hand. Kogla gains indestructible in a turn. I really think Kogla should go in any deck that is green where you have a human commander, especially if that commander has an ETB, but more so, you know, someone casts the board wipe, we return our commander to our hand so it doesn't die, our Kogla gains indestructible so it doesn't die. Seems like pretty good value to me there. And then obviously also Kogla can remove creatures by fighting them, and also when it attacks, destroys artifacts and enchantment. This is such a great card. I think think it can go in a lot more decks. And then of course, because we're returning our commander to our hand, we can then cast it again and get that ETB trigger. I also have Conjurer's Closet in here for the same reason, right? On our end step, it's going to blink our commander, going to come back into play, and we can get that ETB again. This is another way we can get more than one trigger off of our commander a turn, right? So I think this has to go in the deck as well. Old Rutstein, definitely an underwhelming commander, no question. There is just not a ton going on here, right? Again, getting even more than one trigger on your turn is really, really difficult. Even if you do, you're not getting a huge payoff here, so you have to maximize what you're getting out of your commander. And I think the best way to do that, again, is just pick one that you prefer, right? You're not going to guaranteed get treasure or guaranteed get insects, but you can manipulate it so that you are getting it more, right? We have 37 creatures in this deck, so even if we're just milling randomly and we have no control over it, it is likely that we're going to mill a creature and get the insect token. So that is what I chose to build around. But if you choose to build around the others, that's good as well. My advice though is, if you're going to build this commander, choose one that you prefer, and that's the one you're going to build around, right? The deck list for this guy, of course, is in the description below. Feel free to check it out if you want to. And again, the poll for the next video is in the description as well. Go vote to see which one's going to be in the next video, and leave suggestions as well. If you guys want me to add certain commanders to the poll that you want to see, leave suggestions in the comments below for the commanders you want me to add to the next poll, and I will do so. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.